Today, we're going to talk about a story that you might think you know, but I promise there's more to it. This isn't just about a stock market crash. It's the story of the near death and the totally accidental rebirth of the internet we use every single day. So just think about this for a second. What if the entire online world, everything from Google searches to Amazon packages, was nearly wiped out right at the starting line? Because, well, that's pretty much what happened. To really get how close we came, we've got to go back to the beginning. All right, let's set the scene. The year is 1995. This was the true Wild West of the internet, a time of slow, kind of magical, and deeply weird dial-up connections. The potential felt absolutely limitless, even if it took you 5 minutes to load a single grainy picture. You remember that sound, right? That screeching, buzzing dial-up modem? That was the anthem of the 90s. Nobody really truly knew what this blinking, buzzing thing was, but everyone, and I mean everyone, was convinced it was the future. It was clunky, it was mysterious, but you felt like you were part of the next big revolution, even if all you were doing was downloading a picture of a cat in sunglasses. And this belief in the future gave birth to the dot-com startup. Now, when Wall Street caught wind of this, venture capitalists reacted like a dog hearing a chip bag open from 3 rooms away. They just started pouring billions of dollars into absolutely anything that ended in .com, no questions asked. And the formula for getting a massive valuation back then? It wasn't exactly rocket science. All you really needed was a half-baked idea, a logo you probably made in Microsoft Paint, and the ability to say disruptive and first-mover advantage in the same sentence. You do that, boom, you're suddenly worth $100 million. The whole climate was so frenzied that an idea like, say, toiletseattracker.com, which promised to use AI to predict when public restrooms were vacant, wasn't laughed out of the room. Oh no, it got funded. This wasn't about building a real business. It was about getting in on the gold rush before it was too late. And that gold rush very quickly escalated into what you can only call peak insanity. We're now at the height of the bubble, this bizarre moment in time when the basic rules of business weren't just ignored. They were actively mocked. Profits? That was an old-fashioned idea. Yeah, traditional metrics like revenue and, making money were just thrown out the window. They were replaced with new, kind of nonsensical ones. The most important metric became your burn rate, how fast you could spend your investors' money. Losing millions of dollars was actually seen as a sign of aggressive growth. You weren't investing in a company, you were investing in vibes. And the signs of this era were just absurd. You had companies with no actual product buying Super Bowl ads. Offices had ping pong tables, nap pods, and fancy cereal bars. They looked more like a daycare for billionaires than an actual place of business. And through it all, one phrase was repeated like a mantra in every boardroom. This time, it's different. This delusion hit its absolute peak on March 10th, 2000. On that day, the tech-heavy NASDAQ stock index soared to an all-time high of 5,048. People were popping champagne. It really felt like a new era had dawned. But in reality, it was the last day of the party. And then, almost overnight, pop, the bubble burst. The blind confidence that had fueled the whole industry just started to crack. And the questions that were once considered optional suddenly became terrifyingly important. The whole mood shifted when this one simple question started getting asked. Companies like Pets.com, the one with the sock puppet mascot, and Webvan, which burned over $1 billion trying to deliver groceries, they had to admit they were just hemorrhaging cash with no end in sight. The easy money was officially gone. The market didn't just dip, it completely collapsed. Over the next 2 years, the NASDAQ plunged by 78%. All told, over $1.7 times trillion in market value just evaporated. Gone. And the fallout was catastrophic. More than half of all .com companies shut down completely. The dream was so tarnished that enrollment in computer science programs actually dropped by over 30%. And even the future giants were almost wiped out. Amazon lost 95% of its value. It was a complete and total bloodbath. And the perception changed instantly. The media, which had been cheering these companies on, now mocked them. The internet wasn't the future anymore. It was the dot-com, the new tulip mania. It was a fad, a joke. And for a lot of people, the dream was over. But as the ashes started to settle, something really unexpected happened. A handful of quiet, resilient companies, They didn't die. They just kept their heads down, kept working, and in doing so, they laid the foundation for the entire modern internet. This is the reboot. You know, the difference between the failures and the survivors is pretty stark. Companies like Pets.com failed because they burned all their cash on marketing while actually selling their products at a loss. But companies like Amazon and Google, they weren't focused on hype. They were relentlessly focused on solving a real problem, like delivering books or giving you useful search results and building a real sustainable business around it. Their secret wasn't flashy at all. The survivors won because they focused on profitability, they solved real-world problems, and they grew sustainably. They weren't pitching vague dreams. They were building actual businesses, brick by brick. But here is the biggest twist in this entire story. All that money that was burned by the failed dot-coms, it didn't just disappear. Billions had been poured into building out physical infrastructure, fiber optic cables, massive servers, data centers. When the companies died, all that infrastructure remained, like a skeleton just waiting for a new body. And what happened next changed everything. A whole new generation of companies, think Facebook, think YouTube, they didn't need billions in startup capital. They built their empires quietly on top of the cheap, abandoned infrastructure their predecessors left behind. This all culminated in 2007 with the iPhone, which put that powerful new internet right into our pockets. So in the end, the dot-com crash wasn't really an ending. It was a necessary, incredibly painful reset. It cleared out all the hype and forced everyone to focus on what was real and sustainable. The internet wasn't killed in 2000, it got a hard reboot, and it came back stronger, smarter, and way more essential than anyone could have possibly imagined. And that leaves us with a really fascinating question to think about. The internet we use every day was literally forged in the fire of its first great collapse. So as new tech bubbles emerge and inevitably burst, what do you think the next great reboot is going to look like?